We should be recording now. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here today. This is the lunch and learn today is, oh my, we have a new leader, how to navigate leadership transitions at work. So my name is Kristen Coffey. My pronouns are she, her, and her. So I'm a 2020 alum of the Industrial Organizational Psychology Master's Program, which is how I met Dr. Shanock here today. And I currently work with Venture Outdoor Leadership over in the Cone University Center. So I will be facilitating the Q&A at the end. If you have any questions, feel free to share them. I'll kind of make note of some of those topics and do that towards the end. So today I'm excited to introduce Dr. Linda Shanock. She's a professor in the Psychological Science Department, a member of the Organizational Science Program here at UNC Charlotte, as well as a nationally board certified reflexologist and Reiki practitioner. So she's published over 40 articles, has been named one of the top 100 most cited scholars in the field of management. Throughout her career, Dr. Shanock has focused her research on employee well-being, particularly research involving perceived organizational support, because there are a host of those positive outcomes when a person feels valued and cared about by one's work organization. So Dr. Shanock plans to continue the work in that employee well-being area, with research focusing on the physical and emotional well-being that comes from working for supportive organizations and on intervention studies to improve employee wellness. So it fits in well, certainly with our topic today. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Shanock.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you for the introduction. I'll go ahead and welcome everyone. I'll go ahead and share my screen so we can get going with our talk today. I'm hoping, thumbs up, Kristen. Can you see the slides okay? I haven't gotten into slideshow mode, but okay. There we go. All right, awesome. So yeah, I have done some research on leadership because obviously leadership is a big part of being a supportive, organization. So this does fit in, although I did do a lot of new research for this talk and got kind of into it. So there's a lot of material, and if we don't end up getting to it all, at least I'm asking Kristen to share the slides with you. It has some tips and takeaways and some references at the end that you might want to do your own further reading on. So I kind of have three main parts of my talk. One is just overall about followership, about being a good follower, and a term that in the corporate world they call managing up, which is relevant whether it's a new leader or a current leader or really in any situation. And then I'll have some tips for more specifically dealing with transitions to new leadership, and then a couple notes about working with difficult bosses, because sometimes that can happen, I realize. So first of all, the first thing I want you to do is when you think of the word leader, okay, so thinking of the word leader, what words come to mind when you think of the word leader? And then we'll do follower next. So just in the chat, if you want to type in just, what words come to mind when you hear leader or think of leader? Visionary, wise, that's good. Those are two really good things. Yeah, boss, manager, okay, guidance, yeah, okay, those are good. Yeah, that's good. Luckily, nobody said tyrant. Okay, yeah, knowledgeable, okay, okay. And then how about follower? So now think of the word follower. If you think of the word follower, what comes to mind? Okay, humble, okay. Supportive. Devoted, okay. Good, those are all good. Okay, good. All right, those are all pretty good positive words that you could say. What's interesting is that and dedicated. Okay, good, thanks. What's interesting is that leadership has been really glamorized, right? Like you can find so many so many books. Loyal. Oh yeah, humble was supposed to go. Oh, okay, humble with leader. Okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah, humble is a key part of, I think, being a good leader. There's been a lot of books and stuff written about leadership. It's really, really glamorized, but a lot of people don't really think about or talk about good followership or being a good follower or the role that followers play in the process. I've got this quote up here from an article that came out about 6 years ago. There's no leadership without followers. And so there's a lot of recognition in the literature now that it's really a two-way street, that it's pretty hard to lead or influence somebody if they, without that kind of the other side. It's kind of a two-way street. And so it used to be that followership was always thought of as a role, a place on an organizational chart. You are the subordinate, that's your role. Here are the behaviors you're supposed to enact. But more recently, in the followership literature, it's thought of more as a social process. And really what that means is just that leadership is kind of co-created in combined acts of leading and following. Okay, so it kind of, I think it's kind of empowering for followers to think about, because when you think about how are you going to respond to a leadership influence attempt, will you defer to the leader? Will you obey or comply? Will you ignore it? That's probably not a good idea generally. Are you going to challenge it, respectfully, hopefully, or correct the leader, especially if they're doing something, that you think is wrong? Or will you respectfully serve as an advisor, expert, or collaborator? Well, so the research, the more recent approaches on kind of followership as a social process rather than just a passive role, is the idea that, yes, it's good to defer and support your leader, but you can still also advise and challenge and persuade them respectfully. And the notion of a self-fulfilling prophecy comes in here too. So I'm hoping that most of you have heard of, maybe you've heard of it termed the Pygmalion effect. Sometimes it's called the Pygmalion effect or self-fulfilling prophecy, which has to do with, your expectations, what you have in your head. So if you as a follower act and expect in ways that the leader will allow voice and give consistent and transparent information and, promote a good climate within your work group, those expectations, I know it sounds kind of hokey or kind of like maybe it won't work, but in many different areas within psychology, many different research areas, what's in our mind and what our expectations that we have in our mind, that tends to then play out in terms of how we interact with the other people. And it ends up kind of in this co-creation process. Now, it's not going to overcome, necessarily everything if you have a really narcissistic leader or something like that. And I'm going to get to that a little bit later on. But having positive expectations of the role that your leader is going to play can certainly help. Okay, so then moving on to the next slide here, so there's this term called managing up, which is basically the practical or the corporate speak for followership as a co-constructed process with your leader, that followers have the power to also play a role in what's going on with their leaders. And there have been several kind of typologies or, different behaviors that different researchers will talk about that are good to use. And I'm going to talk about some of them on the next two slides. So when you think about, and as I'm going through these, I kind of want you to think about whether you do these behaviors, whether you do them. And when we get to the next slide, kind of what type of follower you are. We're going to have on the next slide several different types of followers. And I want you to think as I'm going through this about what type you are or what kind of things you do, because then hopefully I think we'll have time. I want to have you do a little reflection and maybe a little short breakout room to kind of think about, your type and are you happy with how you are being as a follower and what you might improve. So there's some research by Chalif. This is really mainly with regard to moral and ethical situations. So, there's a lot of leadership literature that based on all the stuff that we see in the news about leaders doing unethical things, or, when we have corporate, bad stuff going on, the leaders usually get blamed for that, some of the leaders. And so some of the Chalif work has to do with, are the subordinates really, do they have courageous follower behaviors? Are they willing to challenge the leader or take moral action if they think something is wrong? But it's also about, being willing to assume responsibility if you made an error, to participate in any changes or transformations that are going on rather than resisting them, but to really try to dig in and contribute and to serve in the ways that need to be kind of more of a partner collaborator role for followers, assuming your leader is open to that. And then the Pittman et al. Camp is really about kind of good performance behaviors and good relationship building behaviors that followers can engage in. So obviously, on the performance dimension, doing the job well, trying to do a good job at your job, I think we all hopefully want to do that. Again, kind of embracing change. We know change is kind of inevitable, even though sometimes we don't like it. We've seen a lot of it over the past year. So, and then working with others, making sure to kind of try to build trust and negotiate differences with both the leaders and the coworkers and engage in any kind of courageous communication. There are things that make us all nervous, but if we can, be open and be vulnerable about what we need to say, that really helps. Okay, so Choloff and Pittman both write about managing up or about follower behaviors, but most of the work, honestly, on followership has been based on Kelly. This Kelly starting in 1988, but Kelly has more up-to-date work than that. And Kelly has follower types, if you will, which this is, again, I'm going to have you reflect on what type you might be. And if you would rather be a different type, think about what you'd like to do differently. And it goes on kind of a dimension from passive to active. So are you kind of more of a passive follower, or are you more actively engaged in, in your work group and with your leader? And then also along a dimension of dependent to independent. So dependent is kind of, your leader always, you rely on them to tell you what to do and depend on them for everything, versus independent is kind of thinking definitely active. Oh, good. I think that's good. Well, let's see. Okay, we got that. Let's look at the bad ones. Okay, I'm going to put the bad ones up. Well, they're not bad, but I shouldn't say bad. But these are the ones that Kelly says are less effective, and then I'll put the more effective one is in this quadrant here. So Kelly would argue that there are these different types, and the passive types. The passive, passive and dependent, that's probably, I'm assuming probably, well, I mean, I don't know, no judgment, but I'm assuming probably none of you here are both passive and completely dependent on your leader. The alienated person, that's kind of the person that kind of goes rogue, right? They're a bit passive as far as getting actively engaged in the group. They're kind of on the outskirts of the group, but they're independent thinkers. They're not afraid to think critically and go their own way and to be independent. So they can be maybe good, but also a little challenging sometimes to deal with. Then you've got the conformist, who kind of just goes along, dependent, kind of goes along with the leader, but is very actively engaged and like totally willing to do, what the leader wants to do. And then you've got the pragmatist, who kind of sits in the middle, and based on what the leader's expectations are or what, the situation calls for, they're pragmatic about it, and they choose how they want to interact with the leader and engage in their work. So I don't know. I mean, to me, there could be some benefits of that, right? I kind of view myself as a chameleon sometimes. So maybe that's why I like that one. Okay, let me see what came in the chat. Yeah. Oh, right. Who's in the upper right? Great question, Alicia. We're going to go there right now. Okay. In the upper right, exemplary. Okay. Exemplary is the type that Kelly would say is the most effective. So trying to scroll down here. Oops, sorry. I've got the dual computer because I'm on my little laptop. Do you know I've worked for a year on this tiny little laptop and it's fine. But that's one thing I'm looking forward to with going back into the office. But anyway, so the exemplary type is a type who, they're willing to, they help make their followers who help make their leaders better. Okay, so they contribute innovative ideas. They actively question leaders' rationale, but not in a disrespectful way, right? Because nobody wants to, well, why'd you do that? Why did you do that? Every single time, but just to, kind of question and play devil's advocate sometimes with the rationale, or at least talk through the rationale with the leader. They're not afraid to oppose views. Basically, they're motivated to be an effective follower and, to be critical thinkers, innovative thinkers, and they call it the exemplary follower. Okay. So now that you've seen, including what's in the upper right quadrant, on the next slide, I have just take a few minutes here to reflect, what type of follower are you? You probably already have that in your head. What type of follower do you want to be? Or types, maybe it's more than one type, depending on the situation. And what's holding you back from being the type of follower you want to be if you're not the one you want? So take a couple minutes to think about that, and then I'm going to put you in breakout rooms just for about 5 to 7 minutes to try in a minute here to just kind of maybe, right, okay, good, exemplary or pragmatic. Yeah, I think those are probably good choices. To kind of talk through with a couple of the people on the call, really kind of anything that I've talked about so far, let it sink in a bit, or if anything's holding you back from being the type of follower. Maybe you say the leader's holding you back. So while you're working on those, I think you probably have those. Let me stop sharing for a minute. And I'm going to set up a few breakout rooms here. Just sign automatically. I'm just going to put you in with 2 to 3 more people. And we won't take too long for this because I know we still have a lot to cover in the talk. But I'll put you in for 5 minutes, which will really be 6. And enjoy a little time to chat and kind of digest what's been said so far. And I'll see you in a minute. Welcome back, everyone. So I hope you enjoyed, if nothing else, at least chatting with some of your fellow ACE folks, but I'm sure there was none of that going on either. But is there something that you would like to share, that anyone would like to share that they talked about in their group? Either in the chat or by voice, either way.
Hey, Alicia, would you like to share what we talked about last about like the leader and which quadrant?
Sure. Yeah. I was waiting for you to speak up, but I didn't know you were going to hand it off to me. Thanks, Betsy. I appreciate it. I'm gonna follow and be exemplary right now and be active and independent.
Excellent.
Okay.
Good.
No. So we talked about how when we looked at some of the things that impact, why are we not in the quadrant or place that we want to be as a follower? A lot of the times it has something to do with who we are following, our leaders. So depending on your leadership style or the way that they either, like you said, accept your input or feedback or challenge, it will affect where you find yourself in that quadrant, or whether or not your leader is giving you enough direction or support that you need to do really well at being a follower. And so that was one thing that we seemed to land on, was when we thought back to experiences of how we were different under different leaders, it was the leader that helped drive that. But then I challenged the group to think about how there's other things in life that will affect how we follow, because it just impacts our overall well-being, like this pandemic or other personal things that we face at home, whether it's an ill family member or a relationship gone foul or a job loss or something. We're always dealing with something. So if we carry that with us to the office, that can affect the kind of follower that we are.
Yes, those are all really good points. Thanks for speaking up, Alicia, and being an exemplary follower at the time. But thanks everybody for just thinking about these things. And you're right. We talked about a leadership being a two-way street. Followership is a two-way street too. And so, as much as we want to empower ourselves and take responsibility for our own behaviors and our own ways of showing up at work, there are times where you do. It's kind of almost that pragmatic approach, right? Really, that depending on what the leader is open to. And that's where, hopefully, if there's good leader development that goes on, or at least if the leader's open to a conversation. The thing is, I think all of you are on the staff side. On the faculty side, I know department chairs, we get a new department chair, every probably 3 to 6 years, sometimes longer, but you probably get new leaders fairly often too. In fact, I was going to ask you a polling question of when you got a leader most recently. And then I thought, well, we all work at UNC Charlotte, so we all got a new leader at the highest level. We definitely did. So, we're all transitioning in that way to our new chancellor. But, I can tell you on the faculty side, at least, and this is kind of true. Well, Kristen can speak to this a little bit too from her thesis, that first-time leaders or people who are in positions that they never led in before, sometimes they never had training about being a leader, or, they were a really good faculty member, so they promoted them, or they were a really good staff member at, in accounting. So now they're a manager of accounting. It's like, wait a second, that skill set is totally different. So, if we can help them, followers can help too. If they're open to conversations, followers can talk to them about, what has worked, why, I feel myself holding back because I feel blah, 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 or I'm experiencing your style this way. Is this how you mean to be, experienced, for us to experience it? And, like I said, sometimes you'll just have kind of that jerky leader, which we'll get to a little later with that. It's, maybe hard, maybe just ride that out. But anyway, accounting manager. Yeah. So, no, those are good thoughts. So yeah, we probably have about 1 more minute for, if there's any other thoughts, and then we'll move on to the next part of the talk. If not, we'll just go ahead and move on. That's fine. Good.
One of
Okay.
the things that came up for me too was competence, like my own, how competent I feel about whatever it is that I'm dealing with will definitely has changed over the
Yes.
years. And so I'm more independent, more active now, I think, because I feel more confident in what I know and what I don't know. And that's been really helpful.
Yes, yes, yes. I'll pay you later. That's definitely something I'm going to bring up. Self-efficacy. We call that self-efficacy in psychology, which is kind of just your confidence or your belief in your ability to do your job well. And that definitely, I think, can affect a lot of things. I'm going to talk about that actually as a kind of a buffering effect also for abusive supervision later. There's been actually some really cool research about that, how that buffers. But anyway, so we'll get to that. That's great, Kristen. Yeah, absolutely. The more confidence we get, then we feel like, okay, maybe I can actually challenge, is this what the leader's doing? Or I can speak up, or I can, whatever it is. So yeah, that definitely helps. All right, good. Awesome. All right, let me get back to sharing my screen here. And the next piece of the talk has to do really more with a new leader. And I found this really cool article, which I've got the link here. It was in Inside Higher Ed. It was from 2019. Some of you may have actually already seen it, but I also put it, it'll be in the slides that are going to be sent to you. I mean, the link will be, you can look it up. But anyway, this woman by the last name of Sutton here, let me get just, okay. This so we can make sure we can see everything. Okay, I thought she did a really good job, and she was also in higher ed, so I thought that was really relevant to our talk for today. So she did a really good job kind of giving some pretty good tips about how to deal with new leader transition. She talked about how in higher ed, it feels like we're always getting a new leader, how it's kind of constant swirl, in academia where, whatever, wherever you work within UNC Charlotte, it seems like things, you might get a new leader fairly often or things change. And so she had 6 things, and I've got the same slide with different, different tips that I'll walk through. And these are taken from her article, and I've just kind of distilled them down. So you'll be able to read a little bit more in that article if you want to. But anyway, the first thing is, when you get a new leader, or even before, when you find out, you get that announcement like, oh, I'm getting a new boss or whatever, it's a good time to kind of think about and just reaffirm your key values and commitments. Why is it that you're engaging in the work that you do? What do you care about? What do you truly care about, and what motivates you? And then think about, maybe how these might be manifested under new leadership. And if you put those on, on a Post-it note or your computer screen, or just kind of have them in your head, then when the new leader comes along and there's a lot of churn, right? A lot of turbulence, a lot of, not always, but sometimes when you get a new leader, because they want to change things. And so when the churn is going on, if you have these things as kind of your North Star, they can kind of help you keep in mind why you're, are the important things about what you care about and what motivates you still going on, or not under this new leader. And if not, we'll get to number 6, assess your career at the end. So we'll talk about that. But okay, and then the second thing that she recommended is to recognize, and it seems like all of you have pretty good attitudes about change and everything. So that's really good, just based on the adjectives you use at the beginning and how you talked about your followership styles. But, we all get resistance sometimes. So, recognizing that to move forward with the new leader, we have to let go, whether it's of the old leader, of the old way of doing things. And so she recommends that when we feel resistant, when we're thinking, oh gosh, I'm kind of resisting this new course of action, or maybe it's a task or duty that the person has asked you to take on, think to yourself, just really stop and think, what would happen if I say yes to this? And kind of going back to number 1, where you're thinking about the things you really care about at work, why you engage in it. If you say yes to this, is it really changing any of those things about your core values? And if it's not, then maybe you're just, kind of resisting because you had an attachment maybe to the old way of doing things. And also thinking about what's the opportunity in the situation with the new leader. So a lot of times we think more about what we're going to lose than what we're going to gain. I'm going to, oh, I love this old leader. Oh, I'm going to lose this, and sure, that's great. I mean, we're going to miss the leader. Maybe we're going to miss the way things were, but thinking about, well, what am I going to gain? What's the opportunity in this situation? Is it an opportunity to have a different relationship with this leader than the old leader? Maybe there's an opportunity for something that you might have proposed to the old leader that they didn't like, but the new leader might. I don't know, lots of different possibilities there. Okay, and then so moving on. Okay, so the other thing, this is kind of all the time, but it seems to be heightened. The rumor mill seems to be heightened during new leader transitions, because there's a lot of what ifs, especially if the leader is somebody who's coming in from the outside, because we don't really have any intel on how they're going to be as a leader. So, but anyway, so the rumor mill is often heightened during new leader transitions. So it's a good time to really stop and think about what's being driven or what's being said from fear. Anything that we do or say from fear usually doesn't come out very well. It's not really, that doesn't really present our best selves usually. So, and it's not just us, but what we hear from other people too. So when people are trying to kind of drag you into the fear mongering or the rumor mill, think about what is really true, like really question, what is really true versus what may have been overblown or taken out of context. That's, just somebody's, based on fear. So she talks more about that in the article, but the fourth one is to think about, this is kind of what we were talking about with the followership types, but, bringing your best professional self to the job, think about how you want to show up when you have a new leader. That's important too, because you want them to get a good impression of you and you want to keep doing good work. And so an exercise that she recommended was to think about maybe your 2 or 3 closest colleagues, right? The people that you work with most frequently, and think about how they would describe you, what words, maybe some of the ones that you used for yourself in the beginning when you described yourself as a follower, but how would your colleagues describe you? Okay. And if you think about how they would describe you, this is probably a good indication of who you show up as most of the time, at work. Are you the wise guy or wise person? Are you the, the clown? Are you, so the devil's advocate, whatever you are, whatever your role is, you might have multiple roles, but this indicates kind of who you show up as most of the time at work. And then similarly, like kind of what we did in your reflection, think about who do you want to show up as today? So is there a difference there? And thinking about, okay, I want to show up as this person today and doing that. Okay. Then with dealing with emotions, obviously, and I think this is kind of to Alicia's point too about, obviously we have lives outside of our work and sometimes things are going on, our emotions aren't necessarily about anything that happened at work. It could be about things going on in our lives. And so, we're whole human beings and we're going to experience those things sometime, and that's okay. But obviously when you have a change of any kind, including a change to a new leader, being in a good place emotionally really helps you deal with that, okay? We don't always have control over the things going on, outside of work necessarily, or even at work, but we do have control over 2 things, okay? And this is something that it's gonna sound maybe a little cheesy, but it's there's a lot of research behind both of these things that are free and effective. And she recommends doing these in her work, which is deep breathing, take a deep breath. People will say, okay, take a deep breath before you respond to that email, or, take 10 deep breaths before you react to what your boss just said to you, or, whatever. There's a reason people say those things, because they really work. Okay, they really will probably cause you to have a different, say something different, maybe in an email, or to think about things, to process the emotions that are coming through a little differently. So breathing and expressing gratitude or appreciation, thinking about the good in the situation, even if this is a difficult leader or you're finding yourself not agreeing with what they're saying. If there are still things that you're appreciative about your work situation, again, kind of going back to number 1 and your key values and commitments, if those are being met, expressing gratitude for those are available to us at all times and are free, they're free. So she recommends those as 2 possible tips, but she has a lot more that she talks about in the article. Okay, and then her final one is, okay, is it time for a new role? Is it time for a new career? We don't want to just jump ship because we got a new leader or because something's difficult or whatever. And I know that, none of us here are probably, would be that reactionary, although, if you want to be, that's fine, no judgment. But anyway, if you really are finding yourself, kind of hitting your head up against a wall with a leader, and it seems like the leader's going to be around for a while, which is hard to predict sometimes, but, maybe you do want to think about what are your career aspirations and are they still being met in your current role? Or is it time to dust off the resume, or a CV and kind of think about what's a new role at UNC Charlotte, that maybe I've always wanted to, post for. Maybe I've always wanted to be over here, or maybe even a new career completely. So, if you really are finding that you're just uncomfortable and not wanting to be with this leader, and you don't think you can just write it out because the leader will be gone in 2 years, that does happen. Again, the churn, the swirl. Then, you might think about reassessing your career. Okay, so before I get into, let me stop sharing for a second. I know we're going to do Q&A at the end, but before we move on to the third piece of the talk, I just want to see if anybody wants to comment or say anything about that. I found her article to be really helpful.
I appreciate you sharing that. And as you were going through each of those, I was thinking about my journey in the last leadership change that we had, and so and as I shared with someone with my group, with Daniel and Alicia at the beginning, we are having a search for a new dean in the College of Education. And so we're going through that process right now, and I'm on faculty and in the College of Ed, and so looking at the perspective from faculty perspectives and staff perspectives, and then clinical faculty, and making sure that all perspectives and everyone has a seat at the table, I guess, is really important. And so thinking about those, but I can't wait to read the article. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, good. Yeah. It's funny. I found it I was like, wow, this is great. And it's what I said and much more. And she's got other resources in there. Yeah. So that'll be really good. But I found myself, I'm in psychology anyway, so we tend to think this way, but I'm not a clinical psychologist. I'm an IO psychologist, I do work psychology. So, but, when I was reading her article, and even when I was reading the followership stuff, I kind of thought to myself, well, when you go to therapy, if anybody's ever gone to therapy, when you go to therapy, what they do is, you tell them about all these problems, right? And then they end up putting the responsibility back on you. So, okay, so what are you gonna change? What are you gonna do? That's just kind of how therapy goes. And the reason I bring that up is because when I read her article, I kind of felt that way. I was like, oh yeah, okay. I can't just, I'm gonna have to do this work, and I'm gonna have to, but anyway, but it's also really useful. So, because I think anytime that there are things that we can find that we can do, because we're not responsible for changing anybody else, right? We're only for ourselves. Now, it's great though, Misty, that Misty's involved with this dean search. And so you're actually getting to have input and kind of feel these people out for, maybe you can, feel them out for how they want their followers to be, or, what their leadership style is, or, see if they'll work for all those different constituencies, those stakeholders that you're trying to represent there. That's really good. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, then I'll go ahead and share again here. Let's see. Okay, yeah. Oops, better do this one. Slide. Okay, so everybody can see that. Okay, so we're now on to kind of more the dark side of leadership. Okay, the dark side of leadership. Now, what's unfortunate is that it happens quite frequently, actually, in organizations, that people with what we call kind of dark triad traits, which narcissism and psychopathy are the main ones, that they often are the ones who want to be leaders. I guess that maybe that's not surprising. And often they're often people who get promoted to leadership. So unfortunately, these two traits have been shown to kind of be responsible for a lot of the destructive types of leadership that occur in organizations, whether it's in academia or in the corporate world. Kind of self-serving, they may dominate others, or at the very least be selfish. They may take credit for other people's ideas, or they may be more reckless than that, where they're, downright abusive to people or spiteful or whatever, and that's never really any fun. I guess we've probably heard these terms, but just to kind of talk about them a little bit more. Narcissism is, people who are kind of self-absorbed and hold beliefs of, superiority or entitlement. They do get aggressive in the face of criticism because it's kind of, they view that as an affront to their self-worth. And they do derogate others too, to help keep themselves feeling good about themselves. But psychopathy is actually a little bit worse, because not only does it have kind of a lot of pretty much all the things that narcissism does, but it also has a coldness about it, where and a more recklessness about it, and they do not like to be punished. Woo, they don't like to be punished. So, you know, they're likely to kind of, when they get punished or something they don't like, they'll kind of try to harm others for their own gain. I saw something come into the chat, so let's see what that's here. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, Kathy, I'm sorry to hear that, because if that's the first thing that came to, oh, sorry, that was private. Sorry. Anyway, I had a comment come in. It was private. Sorry that I shared. Anyway, yeah. So if you've had experience with these leaders, then that's, you know, it's something that can be really uncomfortable and really hard to overcome. That you can be the best follower, best exemplary follower that you can be, and still really not necessarily be able to do anything about it. But I will tell you, so there has been, you know, I'll talk a little bit about the end about maybe what organizations should do about it. But as far as a follower, there has been some really interesting research recently about how, you know, you can't pick your leader necessarily or change a leader's trait, but back to this idea of self-efficacy that we talked about earlier, the idea that when you feel confident in how your ability to do your job, and also when you have good self-esteem, that they're actually less likely to prey on you, or you're less likely to be abused by them, to be a victim of these tough bosses. So it doesn't mean it's going to be necessarily a walk in the park, but it's really interesting work that shows that, you know, self-esteem is something we've all heard of. You know, it's a common term. So, you know, people with high self-esteem, they like who they are. They're confident and they like who they are, whereas people with low self-esteem do not. People with high self-efficacy have a lot of confidence that they can perform their job well. People with low self-efficacy do not. And so hopefully you can start to see the connection with how these, if people have low self-esteem and or low self-efficacy, then they're more likely to be kind of the victims of these abusive leaders, because you know, they become more dependent. So if you have low self-esteem, not only at work, but you know, outside of work, but in the work situation, the leader plays in, because you're kind of dependent on the leader for validation and approval, and am I doing things right? And oh yes, you know, more willing to be subservient. If you don't have self-efficacy on the job, again, you're more dependent on the leader. You know, you think you need direction from your leader. You probably do, actually, if you really are new at the job, but you need clarity and direction from your leader. So the people who are high in these traits of narcissism and psychopathy, either one, you know, one of the unfortunate things about them is that they can they can sense out, they can sniff out, right? Like a shark with a person in the water, right? They can sense out when people are vulnerable, or when they're, you know, they do have low self-esteem, and so they prey on those people more. Now, again, this is not blaming the victim, but it's really supposed to be a message of empowerment, that it can help reduce the, you know, or at least make you less likely to be a target of these people. So at least you could fly under the radar, hopefully a little bit more, even if you have to deal with one of these difficult leaders. So it's kind of, the research shows that these leaders do engage in poor behaviors towards people, but it's moderated, what we call moderated, which is a statistical term for like being buffered by your self-esteem and your self-efficacy. That is, you're less likely to be a victim of it. So I found that really, really fascinating. Okay, so we have about, let's see, about 13 minutes left. So I was maybe going to do another breakout session, but we can either do a breakout session, or we can just, you know, whatever Kristen thinks is good. I kind of wanted you to think about some things that you plan to take away from this talk, and some things that maybe resonated you, or things that you know would do to interact differently with your leader. So let me stop for a second here. So Kristen, we've got, I guess about 12 or 13 minutes. Would you rather me put them in a breakout session for 5 to 7 and then we'll come back, or you want to just allow time for Q&A?
Yeah, as a team building facilitator, I like taking votes.
Oh, okay.
So what we could do is a thumb vote, or a 1 or 2 vote. We'll do 1 or 2 for people who are on camera, or you can put it in the chat. And 1 would be if you'd like to go into breakout session to have some small group time, sort of chat about those questions. 2 would be if you'd rather sort of move into Q&A and sort of have the last 10 minutes to be more Q&A
just
time.
open discussion.
So 1 again will be small room, small breakout rooms. My gosh, words. And 2 would be Q&A time. What would you like to see? I see a lot of 2s.
Either
in the chat.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Great. So we can just move into some Q&A time.
All right, yeah, that's fine. That way we can just have an open discussion, and we can still talk about some of those things. And I just want to show you real quick. So I've got my thank you question slide, but when you get the slides, I mean, obviously you'll have this recording available to you too, but that Inside Higher Ed article, besides the article itself, in the article, she has other like videos and books and stuff about, you know, dealing with some of the stuff. And then I've got 2 articles, one of which I used to help prepare the talk, but these are 2 kind of on handling difficult bosses. And then I've got a slide that has some of the actual research and the references that I use for the talk. So, okay. Oh, I stopped sharing, sorry, but they're the last 3 slides. That's the other thing that I've been doing. Kristen and I were talking about how, you know, we've been using technology for so long now, we would think we'd be getting better at it, but I find myself forgetting to unmute, or in that case, I had stopped screen sharing and then showing you which slides. Anyway, it's the last 3 slides. I've got some tips and some references and things on there for you. So anyway, yeah, so I'm happy we can talk about whatever you want to talk about during the last 10 minutes.
I don't have a question, but I did just want to say this was a great session. So thank you for taking the time to do it.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. When I was practicing this morning, I thought it was going to go way over time. So I'm glad that we have a little bit of time to do. You're welcome to do some just kind of processing, or if you want to think about takeaways, or you're very welcome. My cat got very bored of listening to me practice it, so. But he's been out of the room right now. He tends to respect the Zoom for whatever reason. So that's true.
So I know you said that you had quit sharing, and on the last 3 slides, I think you said one of them was about tips. And so I was curious what tips that you had to share.
Okay, yeah. So the tips and takeaways here, I'll share again so I can show you, since I didn't do that. So the tips and takeaways are mainly some links. So that the Inside Higher Ed piece, that I already gave you the link for that, but within that, she's got some things that she had recommended on, gratitude and changing, and then also a couple websites for, kind of tips for dealing with a difficult boss. One of them I used to help prep this talk, and the other one I didn't. And then, so that one is new. And then just like the actual references, which a lot of those are kind of researchy, but yeah, so I don't know. I mean, to me, I guess the only other tips I would say, basically, if you feel like there's something that you want to change about your relationship with your leader, or about how the leader treats you or other people, I guess, I mean, the first step is really to feel out whether that person seems to really even be open to a conversation. If they're not, then there's probably a bigger problem than what you can take care of, on your own. And you might want to seek help from, I don't know whether it would be human resources, or from, this is in the case of a problem leader, or some, if there's a faculty or a staff or faculty ombudsman that could maybe help, or, a dean if it's a department chair or whatever, whoever the boss is. But I mean, that's something that already, but I think we forget, I think we feel a lot of times like, oh, that's just how the person is, and we're just gonna have to live with it. And that may be true, but there might be, yeah, right. Yes, all relationships, that's right. Relationships, you can see how a relationship is special, that's right. And in the case of spousal relationships, it's in some ways easier. I'm assuming that the spouse is also open to going, we know that there's counseling, mediators, all that kind of stuff available to us. And I'm a big believer in, if you find the right fit for you, sometimes you find a counselor and you're like, there's no way this person's going to be able to help us, but keep shopping, because you've got to find the right fit. You don't go out and just find the first pair of shoes you find on the rack and go, yep, these are definitely the shoes. I'm going to wear these for the next 3 years. You shop around, right? And that's the same thing. I mean, it's even more so with counseling, but yeah, so back to the leader. And then, the other thing to keep in mind is just keep in mind the big picture. So we started this talk by talking about, or somewhere in the talk, I was talking about the swirl, or the the changes in leadership. And so if you're stuck with a situation, keep the big picture in mind and think, well, okay, maybe it's 2 years, 3 years, who knows? But chances are, if you look at the average tenure of not tenure, like a faculty tenure, but how much time they've been in the job, people change out of different jobs. So you might be like, oh, yay, I was all worried and I was going to leave. And then this happened. The other thing I wanted to say is, even though I tried to focus a lot of stuff on that was under your control, things that would empower you all to do what you could. The organization does, they do have some responsibility. And so with regard to like narcissism and psychopathy, there are well-validated personality assessments that will screen for this. And so, as IO psychologists, like there's tons of IO psychologists who are giving these out all the time. So, if we're talking about some pretty high level positions that are going to impact a lot of followers, might not be a bad idea to try to screen for some of these darker personality traits. The Hogan Personality Assessment or Hogan Personality Inventory, for example, is one that's very widely used. It's not perfect, but it's a well-validated and it will get at dark triad stuff. So, we can stop promoting these charismatic people who end up then coming back to bite us. So that's another tip. What else?
Maybe we should have some more psychology professors on these selection committees.
Yeah, that's interesting, Kathy, because it's funny because we in IO psychology, this is the stuff that we do, right? We do employee selection, we do leadership, we do all these things. And so we often say, if only we could kind of like clone ourselves and just take care of processes in the university. Oh, you're very welcome. That we could probably make things a lot better. In fact, my chair, Eric Hagestead, who he's the chair of psychological science right now, who Kristen knows, he focuses a lot on employee selection and also development. And he would really love to, he's like, yeah, I'm so passionate about, doing some leader development for our leaders at UNC Charlotte, because a lot of them really, like I said, just like anywhere, it's not just UNC Charlotte, that they come in with very little experience. And so they don't really necessarily know what to do or how to act with followers and stuff like that. Yeah, you're willing to, we've got a few minutes left. I'm open to entertaining questions about other things beyond the talk too, about, anything about my own work or, anything really.
I feel like this session just made me feel really grateful that I have a boss that's like understanding and not narcissistic. And I also like have a gratitude journal that I try to practice every single day. And that really helps too, because, I see people who work for other teams at the university and their bosses like don't trust them or micromanage them or throw them under the bus to protect themselves and those sorts of things. And I see it all the time, not just at the university, but like within our division sometimes.
Yeah.
I feel after this, I just feel a little bit more grateful that that's not me.
Good.
So, yeah.
Good. Yes. A good leader is worth their weight for sure. Yeah, I agree. And it's nice to see. And if we have those people as role models throughout the university, hopefully we'll kind of catch on that that's how we should be doing things.
Sharon, that was so beautifully said. And I hope that my team says the same thing about me. I mean, like that's what I would love to hear. So if you haven't told her how you feel, tell her.
Yes. Oh, that's such a great thing. Yes. And Misty, I'm sure they do. But just from my 1 hour interaction with you, you seem like you would be good with that. So yeah, that's right. It's good to make sure we tell. My students, I did mid-semester feedback this week with my students from my doctoral level statistics class that I'm teaching online for the first time, but it's actually going pretty well, surprisingly. I was Not sure. Anyway, and then, they had things, of course, that they wanted to tweak and whatever, and good suggestions, but they also flooded me with lots of love, and it felt really good, it felt really, really good. And I'm very grateful. And I wrote them a really nice note of gratitude about that too. So yeah, it's always good to, we forget that the leaders want to hear good things as well. So, and thank you, even, I'm grateful even just for you saying thank you for the talk today too. All right, well, I hope that the slides and the, oh, I thought your name looked familiar. I was like, wait, I know Natalie because, yes, everyone wants to know they're doing a great job. That's right. Natalie has, and Natalie has always done a great job for me whenever I've had to work with scheduling an event or parking passes or something like that at the Center City building. So thank you for that. She's always very responsive and and everything. And Sharon, that's so neat to see a student from, it's been a minute, but was it research methods or was it IO psychology?
It was IO psych, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that was some of my bigger ones. So, but I was like, wow, that name just looks familiar. Yeah, oh, that's
It's
great.
kind of hard. It's kind of hard to forget Harinka, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Just like Shanock, right? Where we're kind of unique, it's oh, that's great. I'm so glad you work at UNC Charlotte and are having a good experience. That's great.
Yeah, well, I just want to, one last thank you to Dr. Shanock for being here today. Really appreciate your time.
Oh, you're so
Thank
welcome.
you.